Okay, good evening, colleagues. It's gone 7 o'clock now, I think, so can we make a start? Before we begin, can I just remind you all that the meeting is being webcasted and will be shown live and stored for later viewing. And part of that, when you're speaking, or at least when you're speaking you wish to be heard, can you remember to put on your microphone and then switch it off when you've ceased speaking. So, item 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Provost. 2 apologies this evening. Deputy Provost Cunningham and Councillor Bamforth.
Okay, and any declarations of interest? We'll get that out the road first. Councillor O'Kane.
Thank you, Provost. Just to declare an interest in items 8 and 11 as a member of the Culture and Leisure Trust Board.
Can I make the same declaration as a member of the Trust Board?
And can I also make that declaration? Thank you.
And Councillor Grant?
Yes, I'd also like to declare an interest in item 8 and 11.
8 and 11 for us all. Okay, thank you. Okay, before we go into the guts of the meeting here this evening, I'm sure as you're aware, we always have our East Renfrewshire Provost Citizen of the Year Award, and I'm delighted this evening to welcome along this year's winner. If you're not already aware of that, then it's Mrs. Evelyn Baxter from Busby, and Evelyn is here with her family, husband Roy, and the rest of her family, or some of her family, here this evening. Just to give you a little bit of background as to why Evelyn did win the award. She has a history of tireless support to the community in Busby and has committed herself to volunteering to improve our local area over a period of years. Evelyn has played a fundamental role in the Busby Memory Lane, an initiative which launched over 3 years ago to give more opportunities for the older people of Busby. With the support of a committee of volunteers, Evelyn plans and delivers weekly sessions in the Duff Hall to over 30 older people. The sessions require immense work to ensure that they're successful week on week, and that includes booking engagements with group members, booking various acts, speakers, keeping the books, minute taking, and much, much more. And I think those of you who have ever run these clubs will be aware of the work that's involved in that. And I know they have, from chatting to our colleagues earlier, a couple of bus trips. I think there was one this week. About 40 odd people go on bus trips to various areas in the west of Scotland. And as has been touched on before with many of us, loneliness is a huge issue for many people, and to have those clubs in the area where men and women could go along, meet other people, I think is really great for the local community. And people like Evelyn who run them, well, we really owe a great debt to them. The feedback from the people who attend the group is always very, very positive, and in particular they're always praising Evelyn for being such a supportive and welcoming individual and a friendly face who runs this very successful group. Even recently, when Evelyn was recovering from a recent knee operation, she still continued to arrange the bus trips and the weekly speakers and so on for the group. She's also been instrumental in bidding for funding for Spider Park, which is a play area in Busby, for those of you who don't know it, which has swings, climbing frames and slides. And working with other members of the Busby Community Council, which is a secretary. I guess anybody that's a secretary for a community council should get a award in their own right anyway. But she's been a long-serving member of the Busby, the Busby Community Council. And they've delivered renovations and organised a celebration for the Spider Park opening. So, in conclusion, on behalf of the Council, I would like to just thank Evelyn, first of all, for her dedication to the community of Busby. Extend my congratulations to you winning the award, which, as I say, is the 2019 Provost Award. So, well done, Evelyn. And to conclude, I would like to present you with a small gift and some flowers from me. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Evelyn. And I did say to Evelyn and her family, for good behaviour, they don't need to stay for the rest of the council meeting. So they've taken me at my word, I say, yes. Okay, colleagues, a nice way to start a December meeting, I'm sure you agree. Can we now move on to the minute of the meeting of the 30th of October 2019? The minute is submitted for approval and signature. Okay, agreed. Item number 4 is the minute volume for the period 31st October to 17th December. Again, the minutes are submitted for approval, but I can take questions in this minute volume. If you're happy, thank you. Item number 5 is items remitted to the Council. The first one, 5.1, is the Interim Treasury Management Report of 2019-20, and this is remitted from the Audit and Scrutiny Committee of the 21st of November. So again, I'm looking for approval of the report, but I will take any questions or comments that anybody may have. Thank you. 5.2 is the General Fund Capital Programme, which is submitted from the Cabinet of 5th of December. Councillor Swift.
Thank you, Provost. Just a quickie. Page 18, Property, Culture and Leisure. We're going to be spending £410,000 on the Sports Centre, but we're also going to be building a new, as we see further on down the line. Is it absolutely mandatory that we spend this £410,000, or could we save it and spend it on other things?
Mrs. McCrossan.
The 410,000 that you're talking about, it's maybe not very clear in the way it's been worded, but it's Eastwood High School rather than the health centre. So it's similar name but slightly different place.
We'll move on, different place, okay. Item number 3, the Housing Capital Programme, again remitted from the Cabinet of 5th of December. All comfortable, thank you. Item number 6, statements by conveners and representatives of joint boards. I think Councillor Bamford's not here this evening, but I believe Councillor Merrick has a statement.
Thank you, Provost. So just an update on East Renfrewshire Culture and Leisure Board Away Day. On the 12th of November, the Trust held an away day at the Emirates Stadium in Glasgow as part of our ongoing planning, learning and development, led by our Chair, Professor Grant Jarvie. In addition to an update on local development planning from Richard Greenwood, Principal Strategy Officer at the Council, the Board had presentations from both executives and non-executives and discussions on topics such as the sustainability of public sport and leisure services in Scotland, the Council's vision, delivering for our communities, and a vision for the replacement leisure centre in Eastwood Park. This was further informed by a tour of the stadium, sports, leisure and wellbeing facilities and the Sir Chris Hoy Velodrome. We also considered our customers' budget and service plans prior to our November board meeting, at which we approved the Trust business plan for 2021 and which has been presented to the Council this evening. That board meeting also considered our mid-year performance with a number of important highlights. Leisure attendances continue to recover following the works at the Foundry and are up 10,000 on last year. Public swimming, that is general public swimming as distinct from lessons, club use, events, etc., is at a 5-year high following the revision of the pool programme. The Trust forecasting a surplus at year-end thanks to both accurate budgeting of our income to within a margin of 1.5% and close management of costs. An example of the latter is illustrated by the latest Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy data. East Renfrewshire's library service had a cost per visitor of £4.08 in 2012, and its latest figure is just £1.06 against the national average of £2.08. Sorry for all the numbers there. Professional performing arts attendances are up over 70% on last year, supported by the continued development of the theatre programme. Which brings me to our pantomime Cinderella, now on at Eastwood Park Theatre to rave reviews. For those of you yet to book a ticket, I would hurry. A third of our performances are already sold out, and sales are up almost 45% on previous years. And a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Merrick. My wife and I are taking the grandchildren to it, so it better be good, is all I can say. And I'll give you a review at the next council meeting. Okay, can we move on then? The Provost engagements are just for noting. And item 8 is the East Renfrewshire Culture and Leisure Trust Business Plan for 2020-21. Okay, I'm sure there'll be some comment and questions on this. We have Mr McCreevy here this evening who can speak in a bit more detail, but I'm happy to open it up for any. It's been approved by the board, but for any comments or questions that councillors may have this evening. Okay, well, that's good. There's a lot of work being put into it, so I'm glad you're all content. We'll move on then to item number 9, which is the paper influencing the future of East Renfrewshire. The report is in essence seeking approval of the 10 key areas and agreement that the Council support and promote the statement in all the relevant discussions with Scottish ministers, with COSLA and the Scottish and the UK governments. I hope there are issues that we're all very familiar with and not particularly controversial, but very happy to take any thoughts or comments or questions you have in the 10 areas. Okay.
Thank you, Provost. I would like to refer to page 101 and key area 9. I, for one, would not be keen for the Council to lobby for City Deal 2 unless we can agree that transparency around the decision-making over choices in the spending of tens of millions of pounds of public money is to be made paramount. I would seek agreement that the following 2 criteria are to be met and agreed by the administration / Chief Executive. The Council makes adequate time to scrutinise individual proposals' business cases. These must have been made months in advance of the Council meeting for the City Deal 1, but detailed analysis of the costs and potential benefits of each proposal were not shared prior to the meeting with opposition councillors, not least those not chosen. That's the first one. The Council should enable a potential pick and mix of individual proposals so that opposition as well as administration councillors and the public also have fair sight of what we are potentially spending tens of millions of pounds of their money on, and decision making is transparent. I mean, we were all at the presentation earlier where we saw participatory budgeting and how refreshing, and refreshingly better than we managed over City Deal 1, I would say. In City Deal 1, opposition councillors were given 30 minutes to agree or deny the whole slate of proposals. So the good proposals could not be kept if the less good proposals were to be discarded. This was opaque and poor practice. The above process meant there was no room for proper debate, proper oversight, proper scrutiny of the proposals before a decision was made. The whole process lacked transparency, and we are talking about £44 million of public money. This did not respect legislation that advises that councillors should get 3 days' notice of papers, and I asked the Chief Executive the week before last if we would get fairer treatment next time, and despite asking 3 times, I didn't get a straight answer. So this is meant to be a democratic institution. It should be subject to democratic oversight, and the Chief Executive should respect our position as democratically elected councillors, whether administration or opposition. For having the impertinence to ask the question, the Chief Executive has advised that she will not come to a Conservative group meeting again if I am present. She advised my colleague and group leader that she felt that I was being abusive. I frankly think she owes me an apology.
Okay, well, we'll try and stick to the question on City Deal. I can perhaps shed a little bit of light as the former leader on it. It was put together very, very quickly. It was done with all party support in Scotland, I have to say, and it was signed off at a very senior level by the then Conservative UK Minister, who was leading the discussion on it, and obviously the then leader of Glasgow City Council. Gordon Matheson was driving it. Very cynical people might suggest it was signed off a week or 10 days before the last independence referendum, and a number of people felt that was perhaps the speed in which the proposals were put together, because there was a desire to ensure, not least from your own political party, that it was signed off very publicly before the last Indie Ref. So whether we'll have another city deal before the next Indie Ref, should there be one, I don't know. It's very topical nowadays. But I don't think there's any intention to deprive anybody of a say in any proposal. But I think it's fair to say all these proposals were put together very quickly. Our director, Mr Cahill, worked very hard to ensure that we get more than our fair share from the projects, and we were very keen to see City Deal go ahead, because I say it had all-party agreement in Scotland, not just in East Renfrewshire, but in particular to ensure that we in East Renfrewshire get more than our fair share of cash to improve the area. So I don't know if that gives you a little bit of reassurance of why it was... yeah?
Historical.
Historical, okay. Councillor Grant.
Yes, could we maybe perhaps emphasise the key area 8, the floors arrangement? This was an arrangement that was put in place 20 years ago to be temporary. It seems to be a very long temporary arrangement. I really feel the time has come, we've really got to get a grip of this. And I would suggest that the leader of this council goes to whoever he goes to when he goes to the administration in Edinburgh and say this has just got to the point of being ridiculous. We have got to get this floors arrangement changed. And it's long, long overdue. We've been giving money away hand over fist that we need to spend here. After all, we are an expanding area. And I don't think we need any more flim-flam from Edinburgh. This has got to be changed. And one other comment, if I could make, Provost, key area 10, when it's talking about climate change and public transport. The one thing I would like to mention under climate change is the business of solar panels. When we are being asked by developers to give permission for houses to be built, do we stipulate that they have to put solar panels on the roofs or whatever for new builds? Because if we don't, we should be, because that's one way of working with the business of climate change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Grant. I mean, I'll take advice from Mr Cahill or whoever in terms of the solar panels. I think in terms of the funding arrangements, there's probably within this council, again, all-party agreement that we should change that. But you will know from your own experience as a long-term experienced councillor who goes to COSLA, you need COSLA agreement to do that. Councils tend to vote for a system that favours their own council, and it's very, very difficult to get an agreement through COSLA that would make that change. And we've all tried over the years. So I think there's a responsibility for everybody who goes to COSLA to lobby within their own political group in COSLA, and that includes the Conservative Party. Councillor.
Thanks, Provost. I'll try and respond to a couple of the areas that were mentioned there. Firstly, it should be reviewed that this is a paper called Influencing the Future. It's to look at areas where we would hope to bring to light and make the case for whether it be additional funding or else or other items. In terms of City Deal 2 funding, when there isn't a City Deal 2 as yet, if there does come to pass a City Deal 2 in the future, then it would depend on what criteria are put within that, what we can actually apply for and how we would actually deal with that. So I wouldn't want to tie our hands as a council in any way until we know what that might well entail and whether or not we can or can't be part of it. So the first thing would be to argue for new funding and then to look at what we can do. Once we know if there is funding in place or that is achievable, then we would look at the projects that come forward. At that point, then clearly we would have discussion. Councillor Fletcher has intimated as to the rushed nature of City Deal 1 and why that happened, and I'm sure that we are all more than aware of that. I would also tend to disagree with some of the comments made in respect of the Chief Executive, because I would have no doubt that our confidence in the Chief Executive to explain the background and to ensure that the projects that would go forward are the most beneficial for this authority. And I have no doubt in my mind, as I'm sure the rest of the administration and indeed many colleagues throughout the room have, in the Chief Executive and all of our senior staff, to take those projects forward and to ensure that proper transparency is upheld and followed through. Because, as we have all known, there have been regular updates on all of the City Deal projects since its inception, and the projects that we've taken forward have been progressed. And indeed, we were one of the first authorities to take forward some of the projects. So it's been beneficial, will continue to be beneficial, and I have no doubt that the hard work of our officers is part of the reason that we are in that position. Jim touched as well on item 8 in terms of the floors arrangement. What I can tell you, Barbara, is that recent work at COSLA has had cross-party support to look at some of the issues around the funding mechanism, because it's not just about the floors mechanism. We know the issues, and you're right, that are involved in that, but also what we gain by losing floors might be that there's a reduction elsewhere. So it's about looking at the whole funding package and ensuring that that is right for each and every authority. As has also been alluded to, the larger authorities clearly will look for the most benefit from that, but we regularly argue our case. And the most productive thing, perhaps, about leaders in recent times is that there has been cross-party support to at least start to look at that from a COSLA point of view and to take those processes forward. So that is ongoing. COSLA have agreed to look at it, and we will continue that work. Thanks.
Councillor Buchanan, I don't know if Mr Cahill can maybe mention on the solar panels and deal with that one. By all means.
To answer Councillor's Grant question about solar panels and future developments, our 2 new developments in Barhead, every one of the properties have got solar panels on them, and all our future properties that we will build will all have solar panels.
Council properties,
all council properties,
that's good news. Okay, thank you for that information. I think your question was meant for all properties, is that correct? Yeah. Mr Cahill.
Just a few quick comments, Provost. The 2 items that were raised, City Deal. That is exactly my recollection of it. It's an historical thing. The deal was announced very, very quickly. I had to move really fast. We put together what I thought was a very high-level strategic programme for the M77 corridor, and the outcome of that was that we get £44 million, which was quite incredible from a council of this size. And I would emphasise also that the majority of that is grant. I do accept that there could have been, had the timing been right and had the circumstances been right, it would have been better to have been able to engage with councillors and elected members. However, my top priority, given the very short timescales, was exactly as the Provost said, was to secure the best deal for East Renfrewshire and work out more of the detail later. So in relation to City Deal 2, I would imagine that if that is announced in the future, and what this paper is simply doing is any opportunity you get within your own parties or your own areas where you have influence and engage to try to encourage a City Deal 2 so that we can build in City Deal 1. However, I think City Deal 2 would probably have better timing attached to it and would give me more time. If those were the circumstances again in the future, I would be happy to make sure I brought forward proposals for much more deeper and better scrutiny by elected members so that they can understand them and support them or not. The other thing I think the leader referred to there was I gave an undertaking last year to start to report regularly on progress and details with regard to the development of our City Deal schemes, and the next one scheduled will be for the end of January for the Cabinet coming up. So that just deals with those. And Councillor Grant's comments regarding solar panels, I think the answer to that is we can't always impose conditions like that through planning on developers. However, I do understand that the Audit and Scrutiny Committee, as part of their next scrutiny review, want to look at climate change and sustainability. And I think, maybe Councillor Miller will be better aware, there's a meeting arranged for something like an initial informal meeting around the middle of January 2014. I knew you'd remember. So I'm quite happy to come along to that, to talk about things like solar panels, and also a bigger issue, but I'll explain that to the Audit and Scrutiny Committee, is about how we aim to be carbon free by the year 2030 or sooner. So that'll be to do with development guidelines, supplementary planning guidance, and encouraging developers as they come forward for planning permission to adopt some of these things, such as solar panels, passive house style heating, houses that have no need for heating whatsoever, like Councillor Devlin had referred to, but beyond council housing, not just for council housing, for all areas. So bottom line is, I'm happy to come along to the Audit and Scrutiny Committee and talk about all of the stuff that's going on in the background, if that's helpful in any way.
Okay, and then Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Provost. I think I just wanted to take the opportunity to welcome this piece of work. I think it's been a very detailed piece of work carried out by the Chief Executive in conjunction with the directors and others, but also I think for the cross-party input that's been able to be given to this piece of work, because I think what we're trying to do in this document is really put on record our issues and our challenges to things that are out with our control, so decisions that are made elsewhere, whether at a UK level or at a local level. And for me, I think it's important to have that stall laid out, particularly in terms of seeking funding for school replacements, or indeed around issues that we have we can find common ground on. For example, the reduction in councillor numbers, which everyone opposed. You've got to have these things, I think, laid out so that we can continue to lobby going forward. And I think it's important that we do have a degree of consensus around that, because, as I say, everyone wants to see decisions taken as local as possible, and I think that's important to us. So I think we need to find a way of continuing to contribute to this document and make it a living document, essentially, so that it is updated regularly and we all do feed into it.
Okay, I think I would certainly echo that myself. These are issues that have been around the council for many, many years, and they'll be around the council for many years in the future, long after I've retired, I think. So, you know, we all need to deal with them. Councillor Wallace.
Provost, just reference key area 3, review of planning legislation to remove the role of the reporter as an appeals mechanism for planning applications. It said that the council believes this approach, i.e. a single reporter making a binding decision on the council, does not represent local democracy. I'm sure the Provost will be well aware that there are occasions in which they perhaps have a better feel of what local feeling is than perhaps local democracy appears to represent. I'm thinking of something like Braidbar Quarry, in which the reporter made a very sound decision last time. So just to bear in mind, it is an appeals mechanism. If people do not have an opportunity to appeal something, then it perhaps makes things perhaps too focused on how perhaps an administration feels about things in local democracy, when perhaps the greater feeling is that they don't necessarily want something to go ahead. So, as I say, it's an appeals mechanism.
Well, planning is not meant to be political. We should remember that. The planning committee is supposed to look at all planning applications in a fair and objective fashion. Councillor Buchanan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just on that note, but the other side of that coin, if you like, is that the reporter has made decisions which impact significantly on this authority. If we look, for example, where us as a planning authority refused house building in the Crookford area, which would significantly impact on our own infrastructure, particularly our schools, then that decision was overturned by the reporter and the land was freed up. A significant number of housing was put in, and that has a knock-on effect on the services that we deliver and how we are able to deliver that. So that has caused a significant problem, and that's the other side of this coin. So what it's saying is that, yes, locally, members are best placed to make the decisions. Our planning officers are often best placed to make many of those decisions. And what we would like to see is a process whereby, as an authority, decisions made out with our control have a significant impact without actually taking into account many of the issues which we see locally and know locally will have a significant impact. So there is another side to that coin. We have felt that issue very robustly because of the issue that we have with our schools, and as we all know, our schools are mostly operating at capacity because of the great record that our schools have and that our education department has. So it's significant within those confines that we have to have a greater say, and that's part of the rationale behind this document in terms of influencing the future and how a reporter takes cognizance of anything that our planning committee does, and hopefully should be supported better than it perhaps has been in the past.
Thank you. Just to follow up from what Councillor Wallace was saying, I'm right in thinking that some planning decisions are made at the first instance by the planning committee. So it's not, there's other occasions where the initial decision is taken by planning officers and then it goes to appeal to the councillors. But like I say, there's some decisions that the very first time it's been decided upon is at planning committee. So if you're to take away the role of the Scottish reporters, you're effectively taking away any right of appeal whatsoever, because it would only be decided upon in the first instance by the committee, and then where does it go to? And to me, it's actually quite misleading, this point, because it doesn't explain what you're going to replace it with. It's one thing to say get rid of the role of the Scottish reporter, but there's no explanation of what it is you're going to replace it with. And effectively, you'd be taking away any right of appeal, which surely is not a good thing.
I think the frustration over the years has been accountability. There is a view that these are matters that ought to be determined by local councillors, and ultimately all of us are accountable to the electorate at the election time. So presumably if the electorate don't like the decisions you take in planning or anything else, they have the power to remove you. Councillor Miller.
Thank you very much, Provost. Just in reply to Councillor Aiken, the first port of call that anybody's got is the planning officers. If the folk don't like what they get, they then go to the planning applications committee, and then they can appeal to the local review body after that, and then finally they could go for judicial review. However, on this paper, I would first of all like to thank all the consultation that the Chief Executive Department and the work that particularly Jill Derbyshire has done on this, and I do appreciate it. The one thing that I would maybe disagree with is a lot of the things it says to elected members should lobby government ministers. Could I get that changed to MSPs rather than government ministers? Because government ministers ain't going to listen to the folk on this side of the room. They might listen to hopefully would listen to the ones on your side of the room, but certainly we could lobby our MSPs, but not necessarily government ministers. And as far as City Deal Funding 2 is concerned, I don't think we have an option. I think we've just got to go for it.
Sorry, Councillor Ireland.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to, as has been expressed by several people around here, really welcome this paper, the work that's gone in. There's a lot of really good key points here. I just wanted to draw attention to a couple key area 10. I'm really looking forward to the next the audit and scrutiny meeting on the 14th of January and hear about the climate change information that we presented at that. I'm really pleased to see about the additional cycling infrastructure would be welcomed. And finally, key area 4, the fact that we have listed Carrollside Primary School in Clarkston as one that is, as we all know, is in need of replacement or refurbishment. It would be great if we could get the government ministers to listen on that key point. Thank you very much.
Any other points? Okay. Well, I stress this is a document here where we are in fact looking for ideas and comments from councillors. Okay, but I'll let Mr. Cahill finish then.
Sorry, I was just wanting to clarify a point because I think it's really important, the comments that were made by Councillors Wallace and Aiken in relation to planning appeals. And I do understand the comments, but remember, this is not to do with the reporter's recommendations as they used to make in the past regarding the LDP, which is where that change came in relation to Braid Bar. What this is, for me, is an issue about local democracy. If it ends up as an appeal to the reporter, it means that you've refused it. The reporter then has the ability to grant that appeal, and it's binding on the council. Now, the alternative mechanism, perchance, that I would think that might be more appropriate is that the reporter might take a balanced, separate view, refer it back to the council and ask them to reconsider it. But the fact is, you have a reporter that's able to make a decision to grant your refusal, for example, in relation to any of the major applications, like, for example, Braid Bar, and you're bound by that decision. That's taking local democracy away from local councillors, as far as I can see. So it's just to be clear about that.
To comment that again, Councillor Wallace.
I fully understand what the Director's saying, but just to bear in mind, it's just that local people, if we lose that right of appeal somewhere, I do appreciate what Councillor Miller is saying, that is we do have a process at which appeals can be made. But I've just cited an example of one in which I personally feel, you may well feel differently, in which the reporter actually came out with a decision which was very well thought of locally. Thank you.
As I was saying earlier, I mean, I think we can debate this ad nauseum, but I think the main frustration has largely been where local councils have sought to stop things, whether it's things like the quarry or not, or housing applications, which are then overturned by the reporter. So I suspect the real frustration from local councils is simply that loss of democracy where the reporter grants stuff, because usually councillors are closer to the communities and more likely to take decisions in line with the wishes of the community. But I think what I would simply want to sum up and say, the comments are all being listened to, being recorded. This is a live document. These issues have been with us for many, many years. As I say, they will not be resolved in the last 2.5 years of this administration. Whoever is elected to future East Renfrewshire councils after the local elections will have largely the same issues to wrestle with. So I don't think they're particularly party political. There should be something of areas of interest and concern for us all that those of you who are there after April 2022 will still have to deal with. Councillor Buchanan.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. It was just to come in briefly on the point that Councillor Miller made in relation to government ministers, whether that be at Westminster or indeed at Scottish Government. What I would say is that perhaps maybe we should also include MSPs in that list and ensure that. So I'm happy to do that. I don't think anyone would object to that. I think we will all equally speak to your respective MSPs and indeed ministers when we all get the opportunity to put forward our case for the issues that are contained within the document. So happy to have that amended if that's possible.
Thank you.
Okay, are we done with that? When everybody content to accept that it's a document that will no doubt come in front of us again at some point? Can I move on then to item number 10, which is changes to the Council's organisational structure. The report is seeking to create 2 head of service posts, one in environment and one in HSCP, together with the relevant arrangements for establishing an appointments committee to interview and appoint people to serve in both posts. Given that the posts in both services were deleted from the establishment only 2 years ago, you will obviously have some interest in this. So I really am happy to take any comments and questions. And obviously I'm looking for this report to be approved and to have nominations for the appointments committees if the report is approved here this evening.
Thanks.
Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, just to come in briefly, obviously, colleagues, we are all more than aware of the structural changes, particularly at senior management level, that we have had over the last few years in the authority for a variety of reasons. However, we have always said that we will continue to review that process and ensure that we do what we can to ensure the proper delivery of our services. With that said, this paper is therefore brought before us. It highlights the needs for 2 posts within our current organisational structure. Now, not all, but one of them in particular is required from a legislative background that we need to look at, and we've just had a discussion on some planning issues, that we are required to have a Chief Planning Officer which would sit at that level. Hence the reason that this paper has been brought forward. And obviously in HSCP we have seen numerous changes over the last few years, and again the structure, particularly in our care sector, very much needs looked at in the support, and these posts are designed to be brought forward and to look at those issues. Out with agreeing to the structure, the main items on the agenda for the recommendation are to set up the committees to look at the recruitment panels for those posts. I'm happy to propose that for the structure in the HSCP, that consists of 3 councillors from the current IJB board, and I would assume they would be Councillor Bamforth, Councillor O'Kane, Councillor Swift, plus 2 members from the NHS side of our board. And for our position in the environment structure, we would look at Councillor Lafferty, Councillor Ireland, Councillor Miller, Councillor McLean and myself in relation to those positions. Happy for any further discussion to take place, obviously.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Buchanan, for that. Councillor Watt.
Sorry, Paul, just in case I get misled here, just some of the expertise that's required to fill these particular roles, we haven't lost any of that expertise through early retirement that we gave people earlier on at all?
No, I don't believe that we have lost that expertise. I think the expertise that's required, some of it legislative and some of it requiring a review in the HSCP, I don't believe that we have, no.
Specific proposal for the make-up of the committees and to create those boards. Are we all happy with that? And happy with the suggestion of councillors and non-execs where necessary? Yep. Okay, thank you very much for that. Can I then move on to item number 11, which is the Eastwood Leisure Centre and Master Plan. The report in front of you is a position statement, but it's also seeking agreement to establish a member officer working group. So can I again invite Councillor Buchanan just to propose the composition of this working group, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments on the report in front of you.
Thanks very much, Provost. Again, I think as we can see from the report, this has been a major piece of work, and the report here tonight follows up and gives us a view of the consultant's report in relation to the same. I think what we must look at is a huge amount of work, as we all know, and huge amount of discussion and debate has gone on in bringing us to this position. The report identifies a wide range of options that are grouped in to the 4 main options, along with a separate list of enhancement opportunities that may or may not come forward, and clearly that will be for the working group to look at and for the Council as a whole to ultimately decide upon. I think it's worth noting that a hugely important aspect within the report is that the report confirms, to the avoidance of doubt, that Shawwood and Broomburn Parks are now identified as protected urban green space, with no development proposals associated with them within LDP2, which has obviously recently been put out for public consultation. So the report itself is there. We have submitted the consultant's report as was requested, and we can now look forward, I think, to setting up a working group which can look over the proposals and bring forward a paper in due course to the authority, or to the Council. In respect of that working group, colleagues, I would suggest that we include the 4 elected members who sit on the Trust Board. I think it's part and parcel of their duty in both roles to participate in that. I would also encourage the Chief Executive of the Leisure Trust. I would encourage one unelected Trust Board member as well, to ensure that is as part and parcel of it. and I would suggest Councillor Gordon Wallace and myself also sit on the working group, and I think that ensures that, in fact, I think the 3 ward members for the area are included in that working group, and that would be my proposal for that group to bring forward, to look at the proposals and then bring forward to the next stage. Thank you.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Provost. It's just, if we could just make sure that this is well broadcast out there, that everybody can see these proposals, that all our residents can see what's being proposed, because anybody that's going to be sitting in this committee, or whatever you want to call it, that we're all sitting around the table, we're going to get a lot of feedback from our own residents, and I think the more people that know about this, the better, and the better informed we will be in order to make a better contribution to what the final outcome will be. Thanks.
Councillor O'Kane.
Thank you, Provost. I mean, I would agree with what Councillor Wallace said. I think this is very much the steering group and a place to begin ideas, but I think absolutely the community, ranging from people who use the facility, young people, people who engage with data, they have to be consulted. And I think the model that we've used for many of our new school building projects has been exemplary in terms of a charrette process where people can come in and actually look at the detail, models, and put things up on the wall and, have their say. I think that's going to be paramount, because at the end of the day, we're building a facility that's going to last, we hope, and be a real community hub. So I think it's important to get that right, and certainly that's what I'll be advocating for in the group as well.
Councillor Devlin.
Just a point of clarity, Provost. If there was any future vote in the siting of the new leisure centre, would there be a conflict of interest with the panel members?
Daly will clarify.
Thanks, Provost. The answer to that question is no, Councillor Devlin. If you remember, I emailed elected members in September last year to explain the position about members of the Trust Board, councillor members of the Trust Board, and their ability to participate in matters relating to the Trust, so that there is no conflict of interest. And if what I can do for you is I can resend the email that I sent out last year just to make the position clear for you.
That's fine. Thank you.
Any other comments on the report itself? Councillor Swift.
I mean, obviously I would like to congratulate the Council for not developing Shawwood and Broome Park, and that's always going to be good news for the people of my area. But I think this is a very comprehensive report. It's an open report. It allows for considered decision making, and I welcome it.
Okay, thank you for that positive view. Can we move on then to item 12, which is the East Renfrewshire Council, Williamwood and South Giffnock on-street waiting and loading order. The report is seeking approval for making and confirmation of the order. Are you happy with the content, Councillor Ireland?
Yes, I am happy with the content, is the very short answer to that. There's been so many issues, well, certainly around Williamwood, with parking that have needed to be addressed. The amount of work that I know that Environment have done on this has been phenomenal. There's a lot been put in, and what I'm very impressed with is the fact that they listened to feedback from local residents. A lot of the feedback, in fact I'm in here as well, I put in my own comments regarding Rockburn. They have been listened to, and I'm just really pleased to see that they've moved it from all-day parking in the streets surrounding Williamwood to its 3 hours maximum. So I want to say thank you for listening to the local residents and local councillors as well. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wallace.
I would like to thank Mr Docherty, who was very responsive to some of the objections from local people. I know I've had various complaints surrounding the parking up at White Craig Station there. But this all boils down to some much bigger problems that we have here, which is about transport, about how we move people about the place. Something's got to be dramatically be done about it. The concern I have is, for example, all the houses that are being built up by the Malashuk there. It impacts on all the stations further down the line. We've got people that are coming down and parking on Davyland, parking on Torrington, Tree Main, etc. And I know Tree Main was a really big problem for us because it's such a narrow street. But all that's going to happen as a result of this, I mean, people at Tree Main are delighted by this, we're getting double yellow lines put down, but all that's going to happen is the problem's just going to spread further down, and until we find a permanent solution to how we move people about, this is just going to be an ongoing problem. Thank you.
Comments, and I do share the fact that, you know, I think we've all had some representations, particularly from South Giffnock, and I hope those have been taken on board. There have been changes. I hesitate to say that they've all been taken on board, because you say that then suddenly people tell you they haven't, but certainly I think there's been a good piece of work done in terms of listening to local people. I would maybe make one point, and it's relevant to what we were talking about at the City deal. As you're probably aware, there's a huge park and ride which is planned for Hare Myers, which is part of the South Lanarkshire City deal. And that, I think, will be very, very useful for people living in areas like Maidenhill, who may well use a much expanded park and ride, and hopefully a better train line out to East Kilbride, which will take pressure off our own area. But it's just one example. If we get this right and we have futures, there is a future city deal, then perhaps some of those proposals, like the one at Hare Myers, is something we should be looking for in our own area. Councillor Lafferty.
Thank you, Provost. Just to remind ourselves as we travel round the periphery of the council that we are talking about South Giffnock and Williamwood as issues. And I think the point was made that there has been extensive consultation between the road service and the public, which has ensured that they've taken on board many changes, and the number of objections originally lodged, a significant number have been withdrawn. So we've got to the place, the very welcome place, that we don't rely on central government, an inspector being sent in to deal with outstanding objections, because these are terribly messy measures. The advertising, the promotion, the consultation, the objections, to get us to where we want an improvement is quite a long serpentine path. But I would certainly, on this issue, there may be further issues in the future, and I hope that the good people of South Lanarkshire Council would put in place parking fees that would certainly reduce the number of East Kilbride residents who travel down to Clarkston and use the free parking provided by East Renfrewshire Council.
Councillor Wallace.
Again, just to echo some of the comments there and thank the Roads Department for what is a very detailed and sensitive report, and we've got a good idea of the amount of effort and work goes into this. As Councillor Lafferty said, very few of the objections have been maintained, so that has taken a lot of work over a long period of time, and I think this addresses the immediate symptoms of excessive car usage in our area and in the country in general, and it will alleviate a lot of the pain that some of our residents face with other folk parking where they live.
Councillor Wallace.
Could I just ask, assuming this is going for approval here, which it looks as if it will do, can I ask when this will all go ahead, or do we have to wait until some of these outstanding objections are listened to? Thank you.
Mr Cahill, can you outline the timescale?
I can't give you the exact timescale, but no, that's the objections issue is resolved now. We don't need to go any further than that. We move towards implementation, which I don't know publication dates or anything like that, but I would suggest ASAP.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you very much once again. Can I also pass on my congratulations to Mr Cahill and Pat Doherty for all the work they've done. The biggest trouble about Williamwood is the fact, and I go back a number of years, and I said a ding-dong battle with Ian McLean at the time and told him that the medical centre car park wasn't big enough. If the car park had been a wee bit bigger at that time, it would have certainly alleviated a lot of problems. Such as Hare Myers, I think it will help, like the Busby and Clarkson. and I look forward to that. But as I say, I met Ian McLean at the health centre one day, and he actually now agrees with me.
They never agree when they work for the council. That's them. Councillor Smith.
Can I just say that it's relevant to my part of the world, Newton Mearns South. We went through this some time ago, and I thought Mr. Docherty did a brilliant job. He listened to people, he consulted with people, he took on board their advice, he accommodated people where it was possible to do so. And it sounds like that's happened again. I do think we seem to have a terrific employee in Mr. Docherty, and I think we should congratulate him. He's done a fantastic job again.
We're very happy to echo that kind of all the congratulations. As long as he doesn't want money, we're fine. Okay, can we approve that report then? With special thanks to Mr. Docherty. And moving on to item 13, our last agenda item tonight, which is the management rules for the household recycling centres. This report is seeking approval of the management rules for household recycling centres. The rules were approved in December 2018, you may recall, and officers were instructed to implement them subject to no objections being made. One objection was indeed received, but agreement of the rules as originally approved by the Council is now sought. So I'm really looking for any questions or comments you may have. Councillor Aiken.
Hi there, thanks very much. Can I just take you to page 176, it's clause 5C. On the face of it, it looks fairly innocent, there's no problem at all. It's basically saying that commercial vehicles, including pickups and vans, will be permitted entry to the household waste recycling centres for deposit of household waste, and B, only if the household waste recycling centre is designated by the Council as one which accepts commercial vehicles or commercial trailers. There's actually a bit of a double standard going on. As I understand that there's the two main recycling centres, one in Inverhead and the one in Newton Mearns. In the Newton Mearns recycling centre, anybody can take a van or a pickup as long as you're a non-trader. So say you had a sofa to dump, you go to Newton Mearns, but in Barhead you're not allowed a van or a pickup even if you're a non-trader. So if you've got a bulky item, basically there's a blanket ban for vans and trailer and pickups in Barhead, and it seems a wee bit of a double standard. It effectively means that Barhead residents who are non-traders but happen to have a van, or they need a van because the item is bulky, like say a sofa, they have to drive all the way down to Newton Mearns and they can't use the Barhead recycling centre. It seems a wee bit unfair to me. The explanation given to me by one of the officers that works under Mr. Cahill is that they don't have the staff numbers to oversee vans coming into the Barhead centre, but it seems to me that both the Mearns and the Barhead centres are of a similar size. In fact, the Barhead centre is probably bigger than the one in Mearns. I don't see why they can't redeploy staff from the Newton Mearns centre to the Barhead centre so that they can apply the same rules. Barhead residents should be allowed to take a sofa in a van, so long as they're not a non-trader. They should be allowed to take a van or a pickup to the Barhead recycling centre for that purpose. So it's just a bit of a concern for me. You're forcing up Lamure and Barhead people to drive to Newton Mearns, even though they're non-traders.
I'll invite Mr. Cahill to comment on that, but just to be clear, you're looking for vans to be able to go into Barhead, but not traders.
Exactly, because at the moment there's a blanket ban on vans, whether or not they're a commercial trader, but it could just be a punter from Barhead who's got, say, a sofa to drop off, and at the moment they're not allowed to do so in Barhead.
Mr. Cahill.
Thanks. In relation to the report that's before you tonight, this is simply just about management rules in relation to behaviour of staff, behaviour of users at the sites. I'm already in correspondence with Councillor Aiken regarding the issues he's raised. That's a delegated matter to me under the Council's current scheme of delegation about the operation of those sites, and I made a management decision due to abuse of that site by both people outside the area and also by commercial traders, that I would concentrate my resource at the other site in Newton Mearns so that I could be able to operate a proper, defined and regulated van entry and booking system. I don't have the resources to do that at both sites, and I do know that since I put when I put this decision into effect, it's greatly reduced the tonnages at the Barrhead site, so the site was being abused.
Interesting. Does that reassure you, Councillor Aiken?
To be honest, it doesn't. It's still a double standard. I don't see why you can't move staff from the Newton Mearns recycling centre to the Barrhead centre if you're short on staff numbers. And like I say, you're making non-traders from Barrhead having to drive to Mearns with any bulky objects. It's clearly not fair. Has Mr Cahill thought about the environmental impact of making these Barrhead people drive to Newton Mearns? Has he thought about the fuel cost of driving to Newton Mearns instead of going to your local centre?
Okay, well, it is a management decision which Mr Cahill has put into place, and he'll listen to your comments, and I'm sure he'll take it on board. It's done for all the right reasons to stop the abuse, but you've made your point, and I'm sure it will be considered in the proper fashion. Is there any other points on the paper? Okay, can we approve the paper? Well, thank you very much. That's our last agenda item, so can I just conclude by wishing every one of you a very happy Christmas and a good New Year, and don't do anything I wouldn't over the festive period. That gives you plenty of scope, so have a good time. I look forward to seeing you all in January fit and refreshed. Thank you.